Right now, my absolute favorite redemption is using Japan Airlines business class or first class with American airline miles. Every year, the government actually kind of releases a cherry blossom season map where it says where in the country will be peak bloom. And it usually starts southwest and moves up northeast.
Hey there, points people. You just heard a clip from Logan from Logan.hobby. Logan has been diving into points since he was a college student back in 2017. He's been living in Japan for the last 5 years, working as a freelance email marketer, and recently started his own points and miles community aimed towards freelancers and digital nomads. In this episode, expect to hear about how to get a visa to move to Japan, insider tips for flights, hotels, and excursions within and around Tokyo, something that always surprises American visitors, and so much more. And if you are in the market for a new card to earn points so you can travel like Logan, check out geobreezetravel.com/cards. And if you're not sure what card is right for you, I offer free credit card consultations at geobreezetravel.com/consultations. We'll send you personalized recommendations based on your particular goals, budget, and lifestyle. And now, on with the show. Hey, Logan. Welcome to the GeoBreeze Travel Podcast.
Hey, excited to be here, Julia.
Excited to have you and to talk about probably the most requested destination that we get from clients, Patreon members, people on YouTube comments, and that is how to get to Tokyo and what to do once you are there. We are going to talk about flights, hotels, excursions, day trips, and how you ended up living there full time. But before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about you and your background and how did you get into the world of points and miles and also become a Tokyo expat?
So I've been living out here in Japan for about 5 years now. I did about 2.5 years in the countryside, now 2.5 years-ish in Tokyo. And my first stint in travel hacking was when I was a broke college student, trying to figure out how I could go visit Japan to visit my exchange student friends who I'd met in college in the US after I graduated. So that led me into credit cards back then. And then after a dozen trips coming out here to Japan, mostly for free, I decided to move out here 5 years ago. So I've been based in Tokyo for the last 2.5 years, still travel hacking around the world and been living it up in Japan.
What is the process for somebody who wants to move from the US to Japan from a logistics and paperwork perspective?
So the hardest part about moving here is you really do need a sponsor. When I first moved over here, I took the most common, easiest route, which is a work visa becoming an English teacher. However, a lot of people in tech and finance also find their way over here pretty easily. And some people come over on a student visa and then with a language school or a technical school and then figure it out from there. So once you're here, it's a lot easier to change your visa and switch what you're doing. But coming here for the first time is the hardest. And for that, a job visa is the easiest.
How easy is it to get these job visas? Are English teachers still in high demand? Is this still a thing, or was it more so a thing 5 years ago when you started?
So it's very much still a demand. The pay isn't great, hence why I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm doing full-time freelance marketing for myself and have stepped away from English teaching. But it is still one of the most common ways, and it's still very easy to get over here as a teacher.
How does somebody move to Japan if they are freelance writing or website designing or doing some other kind of freelance work?
So actually, last year they opened up a digital nomad visa. However, that's only good for like 6 months, and it has some hefty requirements. So, in terms of that, you can come over via a language school visa, or in my case, I'm currently on a spousal visa, which makes it easy. And if you have a lot of qualifications, such as like a PhD, even, there's like a highly skilled visa that is based on a point system for moving over here. And then once you're over here, you're pretty free to do what you want.
As with most hacks we've talked about on this show, the real key is just to marry into it, guys. This is not the first episode where this has come up where it's like, so what's the real hack? Just marry into it.
And after you've lived here for 5 years, then you can apply for permanent residency, which is still a visa you need to get renewed, but then you have the freedom to do basically anything over here.
All right. Awesome. So once you have paperwork set up, or even if you're just traveling there as a tourist, what are some of the best ways to fly to Japan on points?
So the situation's so different now from 5 years ago. Back then, it was a lot easier to say find ANA availability with United Miles. Actually, when I was moving here, I was planning on doing a trip around the other side of the world, flying both like Lufthansa and then ANA business class going through Frankfurt. But then a whole pandemic happened, so I just took the quick route from LA straight to Tokyo. Right now, my absolute favorite redemption is using Japan Airlines business class or first class with American airline miles. But it's just so hard to get the miles I find outside of the American Airlines specific credit cards. But in terms of like last minute availability plus the product itself, Japan Airlines is a great redemption.
I get most of my American Airlines miles because I have a Basque Bank account where I use that as my savings account. Hashtag not sponsored, but instead of earning interest, I get American Airlines miles deposited into my account every month. But as far as the actual product of Japan Airlines, all right, let's talk about this. The food to me tastes like fish flavored gelatin. Am I insane? Like everybody raves about the food on Japan Airlines, and I'm just like, they gave me a cold chicken nugget that somehow tasted like fish jello.
So I will say I don't think you're crazy in terms of the food. It's not like my favorite, but I still think it's tasty. And actually, the first time I flew Japan Airlines business class, how they give you like the rice packaged up. I thought that was like a dessert or something, so I didn't even touch that till after I finished the rest of the meal because I didn't have any explanation of what that was, and I hadn't flown a Japanese airline before. But I didn't think it was that bad. If you fly first class, not just business class, the food is spectacular and your in-flight snack options include caviar and chicken and waffles, and both of those were excellent.
Okay. Yeah, I've only flown Japan Airlines business class, not first class. The lounge food is great in the Sakura Lounge in Narita. They have the fried chicken karaage, which is not cold chicken nuggets. It is warm fried chicken. They have this cute rice dispenser, a cute beer dispenser. All of the food dispensers are very cute, and the food is good in the lounge. So next time I fly this, I am personally just loading up on food in the lounge, and they have an option when you book your flight to just say skip the in-flight meals, save on food waste. I am absolutely going to do that because I've tried a couple times now. My husband has had the Western style or international style dish. It was okay. I had the Japanese one. I didn't love it, to say the least. The seat product, however, pretty good, depending on the configuration. Some of the configurations are weird on Japan Airlines. Have you flown the weird one?
My first ever time flying Japan Airlines business class, I got stuck in that infamous like middle seat, and it was staggered to the point where I had like a narrow aisle to both aisles in the plane actually, and my seat seemed like very separated from anything. Like if the flight attendant wanted to talk to me or give me anything, they kind of had to like step in through that little space. So it felt very private despite being right in the middle of the plane. And since I was flying by myself, it was no biggie for me not being able to talk to the person next to me.
Do you like Japan Airlines because of the price point, or is it like a decent comparable product to your ANA experience?
In terms of the price point with points, yes, I think it's amazing. And my only experience with A&A business class was moving over here, and they actually had reduced service because COVID had started, and the privacy wasn't as great. It was like I was by the window side, and there wasn't much privacy between the two seats on that side of the aisle. Luckily, no one was sitting next to me. But in terms of the hard product, I think I enjoyed A&A more, but in terms of like the service and just the funky middle seat, I thought that was a fun experience on Japan Airlines.
I like ANA better. I've flown their older configuration a couple times. Still need to fly the room at some point, which I hear is fantastic for like one of the top 5 business class products in the world. But yeah, the ANA food I would say is better. The seat configuration, it's old, it's a little bit weird. The in-flight safety video is from the 90s. I swear it was when Pokemon first came out, is when they launched the safety video. But I prefer ANA over Japan Airlines. But my favorite way of getting over to Tokyo is that fifth Freedom flight with Singapore Airlines from Los Angeles over to Narita. That's my actual favorite.
I have done that flight once, but sadly I was sitting in economy and I was not impressed with the food or the product so much. I can imagine it's completely different in like business or first since Singapore is very famous for that. And for the ANA safety video, that Pokemon one is very new actually. They used to have an even older retro style safety video when
This
I first flew on it.
this blows my mind. That thing looked like it was from 1996. All right. Yeah, my vote for how to fly to Japan is Singapore Airlines business class. You can sometimes book it for pretty cheap through Air Canada as well. Are there any other major airlines that people like to book when flying to Japan? Is United Polaris like good?
Yeah, I flew Polaris when they had upgraded the product on the 777 or Dreamliner, like back in 2019. And from nonstop from Tokyo to New York, I actually quite enjoyed the hard product, and the service was fantastic as well. I have not actually flown American Airlines, but I think Delta and United were both very comparable.
I flew American Airlines to Korea. I wanted more Korean movies on the flight. It just felt like the same flight going to Hawaii or something, but longer. Have you ever flown Zip Air on their lay flat seat with no frills?
So I have not flown Zip Air, but one of my friends that came out to visit me here flew it and didn't realize that meals weren't like included in the base price when they booked it and talked about how the experience was pretty miserable.
You can buy food though, and it's not crazy expensive to buy food on the plane.
Yeah, they just had no idea they really needed to pre-book it, and then when they got on the plane, whatever their situation was, they weren't able to.
They didn't have lounge access right before either. Oh, that's rough. Okay, so for anybody who's not familiar with Zip Air, you can buy a lay flat seat. You can't do this with points, but with money, it's less than $2,000 across the Pacific from Tokyo over to San Francisco or Los Angeles. You can get this for as low as I've seen 12 or $1,300 flights in lay flat, but it's not full business class. So the seat is lay flat, but it doesn't come with food. It doesn't come with lounge access or any amenity kits or any of those other things. But if you just want to sleep on the plane because it's a long flight, that cash ticket can be a pretty good option.
It's something I'm considering for myself because I do not sleep well in economy. I might be a little skinny, but I'm 6'2", 187 centimeters, so I feel like I can't recline or relax well in economy, and my legs are usually up against the seat in front of me. So I think I might consider trying Zip Air just the lay flat. Like that's all I need.
Thought you were going to say 6'2", 187 pounds. I'm like, I don't think that's accurate, but all right. So once somebody lands in Tokyo, they're either landing in Narita or Haneda. What are the differences between the two, and what tips do you have about navigating those airports?
So Haneda is ideal because it's closer to the Tokyo City Central. You can get straight to like Shinagawa on the Yamanote line within like half an hour of landing, or I guess leaving the airport, I should say. So it's closer to the city, and there's just like the KQ line or the Tokyo monorail. Both of those are very convenient options. Narita Airport isn't technically even in Tokyo. So in terms of the train, there's like the Nix and the Keisei line, and both of them are good options. The Keisei line is a little cheaper, and depending on where you're staying, like if you're on the eastern side, might be better and quicker to get to. And I recommend getting the welcome suica when you land at the airport. It's a travel card that you can use to pay basically anywhere and to quickly get on all the metros and JR trains in Japan very easily. And you can pick one of those up at the airport when you fly in. And I highly recommend you do that.
If you have an Apple phone, I hear the app works pretty well too, where you can get the Welcome Suica app and scan that to get onto trains. If you are like me and you are team Android, it's a bit more difficult. If you land in Ada, Terminal 2, just take the free intra-terminal shuttle to Terminal 3, because that's where they have exchange machines for money. That's where people can sell you these Suica cards, because otherwise, yeah, in Terminal 2, those machines do not take American credit cards, which was very difficult. So Hot tip, if you land in Haneda, Terminal 2, and you have an Android phone, you're in the wrong place. Go somewhere else. Terminal 3.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I am also team Android, and since I'm from the US and I actually still have a US Android myself, so I cannot use mobile Suica either. But yeah, if you have Apple, you can just download that straight to your Apple Wallet and just tap your phone to get on and off the trains and such. Also, American credit cards don't have PINs for the most part. At least most people don't even know how to find theirs. And not just for cash advance, but Japanese credit cards tend to have PINs. And if you're using like the ticket machines, you need a credit card with a PIN if you want to use that. So a debit card's okay because everyone has a PIN for that. But if you want to use an American credit card to buy like, say, bullet train tickets, you need to go talk to someone because you can't use it at the machine. And there's a lot of things like that where American credit cards just randomly aren't accepted.
What are some of those other kind of strange things that you wouldn't expect? Because it's difficult enough being illiterate in Japanese, as most Americans don't read Japanese, don't speak Japanese. What are some other things like that where you're like, I can get around this even like without the language issue, but like credit card's not working? That's unexpected. What else is there like that?
So a statement that I like is that Japan has been stuck in the year 2000 since 1980, where they're very futuristic, but they're also kind of behind. It's a very cash-based society still, so you always want to be carrying cash with you just in case. But surprisingly, QR code payments are also like a big thing here. It's a little harder to access as a foreigner to like line pay or whatnot, but the Suica card has taken more places than like credit cards, plus cash is still very much king here. And then you run into some issues with new bills and old bills and new coins and old coins, with the new ones not always working on the like vending machines and stuff, even though they've been out for years now. There's a lot of funky little things like that.
All right. So, yeah, always have some cash on hand. I like to do that as well, even though whenever we were dining at restaurants or anything, everybody was accepting Chase Sapphire Preferred or those other cards that most of us have. If I'm going to buy like a $2 snack, I'm not going to charge it to a credit card. So, it's good to just have some yen on you at that point. But yeah, that's a good thing to know as well. Language issues, which is a common thing that people worry about when going to Japan. How do you navigate that as an American traveling through Tokyo?
So staying within Tokyo, you're basically fine with just English. If they see you as a foreigner, they're going to assume you don't speak Japanese in the big city. Like even as someone who's lived here and does speak Japanese, I'm usually greeted in English, or even if I start speaking Japanese, they'll reply in English because they're not sure of my Japanese level. So within Tokyo, for the most part, you'll be okay with English. Besides that, like just a quick Google Translate can really make the difference if there is some kind of misunderstanding or confusion. I will say, though, there are some restaurants that you might have seen gone viral that have signs that say, like, no foreigners or only people who speak Japanese allowed. Now, some of those might be slight mistranslations if they're trying to say we only have Japanese speaking staff, but there are some places where you might get rejected without Japanese, but 99.9% of the time within Tokyo and even like outside of Tokyo, you'll be fine with just English.
I also like Google Translate photo mode very much for reading menus and signs in Japanese, where you just scan your phone over it. It'll translate right before your eyes. So that's pretty great. I am always greeted in the local language. I don't know why, because I don't actually look Japanese, but it happens. And I usually reply in vowel sounds, like, and then they switch to English and it works fine. But okay, we've covered flights, airports, language, how to get on a train once you're at the airport. Where do you recommend people stay when they visit Tokyo, especially if they're into points and miles?
Well, if you want to stay pretty central to like where a lot of touristy stuff is, the Shibuya Shinjuku area is probably ideal. One of my all-time favorite redemptions is the just the Hilton Tokyo in Shinjuku. The location is pretty convenient because it's close to the station and they have buses, like shuttle buses between the hotel and the station, and it's only like a 15-minute walk. The redemption is good. You can find it for as low as like 60,000 Hilton points sometimes. And if you compare that to the Conrad, which is fantastic, but the location isn't that convenient, Honestly, I'd prefer the Hilton over the Conrad for the most part if I want to actually explore the city versus just enjoy a nice hotel. Marriott has a lot of options. They've actually opened a few more hotels, some of them right next to some of their other hotels. But Ginza has like four Marriotts within like a block of each other. The courtyard is extremely dated, but I used to stay there because it was cheap, point wise. The AC is nice. I stayed in the Edition. There's two editions. Toronto Hills was very nice. And like the Toronto Edition, like the Ritz-Carlton, the hotel itself is actually like the top 5 or 10 floors or whatever of an office building, basically. So there's some Marriott hotels, especially the Conrad's the same, where no matter what, you're on a super high floor and you have a great view of the city.
I stayed at the Marriott in Shinagawa, which is south of most of the city, but really great area because it's right next to the Yamanote line. So you have easy access to everything. The rooms are a little bit bigger and you have more room to spread out because it's slightly outside of the city. And I would recommend it for people who have children because there's a lot of parks and things nearby, and you're not quite as worried that your kid is going to get hit by a car or overstimulated with all of the lights and signs and everything there. I've also stayed at Ritz-Carlton Tokyo for a night, used an 85K certificate there. It's in Roppongi Hills, which is a very nice area of Tokyo. More difficult to get to than I expected because it's centrally located, but I had to do like 2 line transfers in order to get back to the airport. So that was a little bit weird, but fantastic hotel. And we got upgraded to, I don't even know what that suite was called. It was an amazing suite. It looks a lot like the background that you have right now for your Zoom background. It looks like that. It was fabulous. The bed was like 4 beds next to each other. We've stayed at the Hyatt Centric in Ginza. We've stayed at the Grand Hyatt Tokyo, both using Hyatt Cash Rates Plus Suite upgrade for the 6,000 or 9,000 points. Both of those were great as well. Very centrally located. Again, it took at least 1 line transfer on the train to get there, but yeah, both fantastic hotels as well.
Yeah, and I feel like Hyatt actually has some great redemptions around Tokyo as well in terms of points, like staying at the Andes and such. Also for the luxury hotels like Ritz-Carlton and St. Regis, if you just go over to Osaka, the next biggest city, the redemptions are actually a lot cheaper for, I mean, still a luxury brand hotel in terms of using your points. Tokyo is just so over touristy right now. A lot of the prices, both money and points, have gone up quite a bit. But there's still some value to be found outside of Tokyo, especially, I think.
If someone wants to stay just in Tokyo, what are some tips for saving money, whether it's on accommodations or food or excursions or anything else like that?
So sometimes going outside the major brands, even just like using Airbnb or Booking.com, you can find some cute little local places and get almost like a more authentic local experience for a lot cheaper than you could get staying at one of the big international brands, especially if you're going to be here for quite some time. And I also recommend avoiding kind of the super famous touristy places. Like if you go to Tsukiji Fish Market, which I know you recently went to on your trip, like the rolled egg on the stick, that's very tasty and cheap. But a lot of the seafood options, you can get like just as good quality seafood for a lot cheaper in more quieter neighborhoods. So avoiding the touristy areas, at least just to eat, like it's great to look around there. But in terms of food cost, getting just slightly out of the way can make a big difference for saving money on that. And in terms of trains, the JR and Metro are both pretty cheap. You actually get a slight discount using your Suica versus paying cash at the tickets. Plus, it's a lot quicker for that. Train costs add up very quickly. I find like even if dollars there, just basically watch how much you're actually traveling on the trains and make less connections if possible.
One overpriced thing that is completely worth it in my mind in Tokyo is Tokyo Milk Cheese Factory because those cookies are like $2 per cookie and they're not huge, but oh my God, once again, not sponsored, but it sponsor me, Tokyo Milk Cheese Factory. I love that brand so much. They make cheesecakes and cream puffs and cheese flavored ice cream, which is better than you guys are thinking it is. It is amazing. And we brought back 6 boxes of cookies back home because I love them so much and they're not here in America. But that is my favorite brand in all of Tokyo is Tokyo Milk Cheese Factory.
I have not actually tried that before. And okay, Japan has this weird thing with cheese where they don't have a lot of good cheese for eating. And usually when you hear the word cheese with a shop, you're getting cheesecake or bakery stuff like you got there. Hokkaido is super famous for that, but I'm gonna have to go find this Tokyo Milk Cheese Factory and
There are five. You live you're in the Shinjuku area, so there's two there. You live near the best one, which has the ice cream where they'll stick a piece of cheesecake and a cookie into that cheesy ice cream, which is great. There's the Akibara one. That one has the milk pies. I have them all on a map. I planned our days around Tokyo, around where are there Tokyo milk cheese factories. Speaking of Akibara, if anybody is into anime nerd stuff like I am, that's where you go for that. Yeah, let's talk about the different districts. So, what where do people go if they are into anime stuff versus historical stuff versus foodie stuff versus shopping stuff versus all the like different enclaves of Japanese hobbies and pieces of culture that people are into?
so I actually have a list of the touristy places that I think are worth it for people to visit that I'd be happy to share. But like you mentioned, Akihabara is famous for anime, especially. You go there and it's just big old billboards featuring mobile games and anime and stuff everywhere. There's some cool stuff if you're into retro gaming there as well. Like there's a store called Super Potato where you can find some really old consoles and stuff. And Akihabara is also fairly close to the Tokyo Station area, which has the Imperial Palace, which you're not allowed to enter. However, the gardens around it are pretty. And once a year on his birthday, the emperor will come out and wave to people. So if you happen to be in Tokyo on the emperor's birthday, you can potentially see him. Tokyo Station itself is like a beautiful brick facade that's great to see. There isn't too much to do around there since it's mostly like an office district, but checking out the palace and the station is definitely worth it. And then a little south is Ginza, which is kind of the ritzy high-end shopping district. It also has a lot of fun cocktail bars. I highly recommend Bar Sherlock. It's one of my favorite bars for a nice cocktail and just like a very quaint little environment. There's a lot of the high-end brand stores there. You'll get a lot of tourists from overseas there to taking advantage of the weekend to buy the big name brand stuff. And there's a lot of tasty restaurants. It's got the famous Seiko building. Shinagawa, where you stayed, for me, that's usually like my Shinkansen transfer point. And if I'm craving Mexican food, there's a place I stop at there sometimes. If you go further west, then you end up in the Shibuya area, which everyone knows for the crossing. There is some shopping and nightlife around there. The nightlife's probably more the highlight after the crossing. And then same with Shinjuku, you got a lot of shopping. And then it's also like the nightlife and red light district and stuff. So it's kind of cool checking out Shinjuku, both especially Kabukicho, like during the day and during night, and just seeing the different vibes going on. And then Ueno's got some more nightlife, drinking, and then it's got the zoo and some cool parks to check out. Shinjuku's also got like Yoyogi Park and Gyoen. If you come during cherry blossom season, Shinjuku National Gyoen Park, you have to pay like $5 to enter, but it's one of the best places to sit around and enjoy the cherry blossoms.
When is cherry blossom season these days? Because it's getting earlier and earlier in the year, it feels like.
So the cherry blossom season varies every year, and it also varies depending where you are in Tokyo or in Japan. Every year, the government actually kind of releases a cherry blossom season map where it says where in the country will be peak bloom, and it usually starts southwest and moves up northeast. Last year, it was in Tokyo, beginning of April. This year, I think it was towards the end of March. And if you come in like late April or early May, you can go up north. Like Hokkaido was at peak bloom like 2, 3 weeks ago. So even in May, there were some beautiful cherry blossoms.
Very nice. All right. So, any other tips for people who are exploring just Tokyo?
So just within Tokyo, I think what you want to do is just get lost outside of the main areas because there's some very quiet parts of the city that you can see that don't feel like Tokyo, and that's one of the coolest experiences. Another area I did forget to mention, Harajuku. And that's also right by Meiji Shrine, which is like one of the biggest. It's connected to Yoyogi Park, but like you walk through it and you feel like you're in a forest. You kind of forget you're in the middle of a city besides the occasional noise of the train. Plus, it's got like the cool fashion and stuff. Basically, if you're here in Tokyo, like to foreigners, Tokyo is a city. To Japanese, it is a collection of cities. It's much bigger than that. So when you're planning your time in Tokyo, look at what you can do in each area so you don't have to jump around the city because it can take like half an hour to 45 minutes just to get to the other side of town. And you don't want to have to be going back and forth.
For sure. Yeah. All right. So if somebody wants to go outside of Tokyo for day trips, where would you recommend?
So the other big city is Osaka, and that has its own international airport with flights there. You could do a whole another trip just exploring Osaka, but closer to Tokyo, there's a surprising amount of nature, even within Tokyo Prefecture, because it's not just the big city part. You can take a train, like hop on the Go line and go west, and you end up in the countryside. There's fishing you can do on rivers, and there's some places where you can actually like catch some fish and then they'll cook it up for you however you like, and you can just eat your fresh catch. They also have restaurants like that, but it's more fun to do that when you're catching it from a river rather than a fish tank. Oka Prefecture, like Mount Fuji, is also pretty close by. If you have an international driver's permit, you can rent a car, and there's the five Fuji lakes, the Fuji Goko, and it's a really fun road trip to do around Mount Fuji on the Yamanashi side. Don't try to go to Mount Fuji outside of climbing season. There's really nothing you can do, but looking at it from like the lakes area, or if you go to Shizuoka, it's very pretty to see.
Are all of these reachable with trains and public transit, or are there any places where you need to rent a vehicle? And what would that process even be like?
Basically, all of those are accessible via either train or bus, depending on what you want. Actually, there's a direct train to an area called Shuzenji where they have a Marriott. And if you can get upgraded at the Marriott, there's actually like a hot springs attached to your room. And they do just have like a hot springs in the hotel. And since it's outside of the city, not a lot of foreigners go there. So the point redemptions are usually pretty cheap. So I highly recommend checking out that area. But yeah, the trains and buses are great and super simple. If you do need to rent a car, if you're an American, just go to AAA and get an international driver's permit. It's good for a year. And then when you come over here, as long as you have that, my favorite rental car company is Nippon Rental Car and them and Nissan. One or both of them actually have an English language rental site. And as long as you have the permit, you can rent a car. Unless it's like holiday season, you can get a car for a day for like 40, $50.
Nice. Yeah, speaking of hot springs, the onsens are a big thing that people like to visit in Japan. Are there a lot of those in Tokyo, or do people need to go outside of the city? If somebody's like, I want an onsen experience, what would you recommend?
So I used to live in Shizuoka Prefecture in an onsen town where there's like literally 100, but you don't have to go that far. There is a direct train there to Ito, which I really recommend people just visiting. There's also a great craft beer place. But in terms of in Japan or in Tokyo, some people mix up sento, which is like a public bathhouse, with an onsen, which is a natural hot springs. And sometimes they're very similar. Like you can have a completely indoor onsen but it has the natural spring water, so it's a little different. But in Tokyo, there's a Sento in Shinjuku that's a little expensive but pretty nice. But my favorite in Tokyo, it's called Niwa no Yu, and it's in Narimaku Toshima-en is the local station. And it's great for foreigners as well because some a little weary about doing the full nude experience. This place has the traditional, but then there's also like a swimsuit mixed gender area. So you can enjoy it like with your family or partner as well.
Are they still weird about the tattoos? Where if you have tattoos, they want you to cover it up before going into these bathhouses or onsens?
Yes, most of them do not allow tattoos at all unless you have like a small one that you can cover. My favorite onsen in Shizuoka actually has a sign where in English it says, "A person with tattoos, a gangster, is not allowed in." But You can find some little local ones that might let you in, but that's a little harder to find for English assistance. If you are a guy, sorry girls, Sauna Tokyo in Akasaka has like a hot bath and then a bunch of saunas, and they are tattoo friendly. You just have to pay an extra 500 yen to enter. It's male only, except for like one day every month or so they do like ladies' day.
I forgot where I went to one. I feel like it was probably just Park Hyatt Kyoto, where it was just like full clothing optional experience. I do have small tattoo on my ribs. It wasn't so much of an issue because one, there were like two other people in the entire place. We had it mostly to ourselves. And yeah, I'm gangster. That's all anybody needs to take away from this episode. I did not have too much of an issue with it because it was like more of the sauna experience within the hotel, but I have not been to an actual hot springs onsen place.
I will say there's one I just remembered, which I think you've been to. They have a pretty famous hot springs as well, where my friend got in a little trouble with like a tiny tattoo on their foot, where they're like asked to cover even that up, where you could barely tell it was a tattoo. So that place has like that themed one you might have seen online, where there's like the wine bath and the green tea bath and stuff like that. And it's swimsuit and foreigner friendly, but it's not tattoo friendly.
Sometimes like they'll just have you put like a bandage or
Mhm.
something over it and then you'll be okay. If you're walking in with sleeves, might be a bit difficult to get into some of these, but yeah, that is another one of those things where sometimes people don't realize that if you have tattoos, they think you're a gangster, mostly because of the historical context of yakuza and all of that. But yeah, that's something to prepare for if you want to visit some of these hot springs. Cover tattoos if you have them.
Yes, if they're small, you can cover them. If they're big and uncoverable, I'm sorry.
Right. Any other tips and tricks for people who are staying mostly in the Tokyo area and then taking day trips or doing anything else within that area of Japan?
I will say that the Shinkansens make it very easy to go kind of far, even for a day trip. And you might want to check out some places like up north where foreigners don't go that often. As long as it's somewhat of a reasonably sized city, there will still be English support and English menus for the most part. So don't be afraid to get out of the city and explore and experience what the Japanese would call real Japan. And I'm sure there's plenty of things I missed around Tokyo, but the city's great to explore, but it's also great to get out of Tokyo. And I think a lot of foreigners miss that.
Yeah, we'll definitely need to do a follow-up episode later on all the things to do in Japan outside of Tokyo. But in the meantime, where can people find you if they have questions about traveling through Tokyo or the rest of Japan?
So I am on Instagram at logan.hobby. That's both my freelance page and just where I contact people in general. I also started a school community sharing my own travel hacking tips, school.com/FTH. And I'm also on Facebook, just Logan Hobson. If you want to ask questions or if you're planning on coming to Japan and just want to hit me up, feel free to contact me just about anywhere I am.
Well, thank you again so much, Logan, for coming onto the show and sharing all of your wonderful tips and tricks with us today.
Yeah, of course. It was great to connect with you again, Julia.